The following is a conversation that we had with Jakob Knutzen, the co-founder and current CEO of Butter, a revolutionary new online meeting platform.
I'm Jakob. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Butter, based in Denmark most of the time, but also nomading quite a bit around the world, migrating when it's too cold here.
Think Zoom, but with a soundboard and air horns and emojis, and a real revolution in that whole area.
Butter is like Zoom, but for collaborative sessions. That would be like workshops or trainings. And we have the ambition of basically owning all synchronous collaborative sessions in the world down the line.
Jake has been a really prolific member of the community that we've been involved in over the last few years, and his story of how they got Butter off the ground is very interesting, and they so far have been enjoying some very successful and stable growth. So today he shares how they've managed to do that, how they managed to work with a team across 11 different countries and still foster very strong work ethics and really cool culture. And that's about it. Listen to the episode for more information. It's a very good episode. I think you're going to enjoy this one. Subscribe to the podcast anywhere you find good podcasts. This episode is brought to you by Codesphere. As all of them, you can find out more about what Codesphere is and how to sign up yourself at codesphere.com. Enjoy the episode. Just enjoy it. It was really only May 2020 that you started. That was so soon. Because in our boot camp, which was in my coding boot camp, so just kind of announced to the world I was one of the coding boot camp people there. But I did one, and in that camp, you actually came and gave a talk because we were talking about how you guys got your MVP off the ground and out the door in 3 weeks.
Yeah. No, it was very fast.
I remember listening to that talk and being like, how on earth did these people do this in 3 weeks?
Yeah, no, it was fun times. It was fun times. But it also feels like ages ago that we started out. So, yeah.
It was also really daunting because I remember your CTO, he joined the talk, and I saw a post on Hacker News, just as a bit of backstory. I saw a post that he did on Hacker News of like, just put this together in 3 weeks. Mm-hmm. And then it turned out he even like the MVP he built in a weekend, and he was like, I think we can do it. And it's just like,
my jaw was on the floor. I was like, you did it in a weekend and then just fixed it over 3 weeks. So
no, it's our founding team, especially my two co-founders. They're quite amazing people, both CTO and CPO, who's designed everything and kind of given Butter the Butter vibe. So it's been fun.
And was there a particular place the idea kind of came from, or was it just was it over a long period of time?
No, it was actually quite fast. It came. So I've always believed very much in remote work, and we were working as a remote team before, my two co-founders and I. And we managed to run the startup into the ground, but we really loved this whole idea of working together remotely. And then when COVID struck, a lot of teams were trying to kind of find their way in terms of how do we work together remotely. Nobody really knew, but we had a bit of experience before. So we thought, hey, like let's help these startups out by doing workshops for them. And I have a background in consulting and marketing agency. I've done loads of physical workshops, so I thought it would be a piece of cake. But then we were sitting there with, Zoom and Miro and Mentimeter and a gazillion tools, and it just did not feel like a piece of cake. It was super technically complicated to kind of get these workshops to actually work and people get the message across, because I was sitting fiddling with everything. And it was so hard to get people engaged in these sessions. So that was when the idea to Butter kind of came to us, and like, hey, there must be a better way to do this. There must be a more engaging way to have these work.
Yeah, because I think as someone who's taught over the pandemic, like engagement from both sides, like the person who's holding the presentation and the person who's joining, it's just like it can feel like pulling teeth when you're just trying to get people involved. So I think it's a good it's an accolade to reach for, is to actually get people to be interested in online communities like that. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and I think that it's collaborating remotely is different than sitting in a room. Like that energy when you're sitting in a room, you walk up to the whiteboard, you grab the pen, and everyone's looking at it, and someone else grabs the pen, and it's just kind of infectious, right? But it's not the same way when you're sitting behind Zoom, but it's that energy that we try to capture and butter. That infectious energy that you feel when you're in the room, and that we try to capture and harness.
Can you do video on Butter? Can we record video? Because I'm thinking we could just do we could do the podcast on that, Tim.
You can record amazing videos on Butter. Yeah,
there you go. Smooth
but yeah, you
as
can.
butter.
Oh yeah, very smooth.
I've got to give a shout out on the episode to the latest video. I know we spoke about it off air, but I've got to do it now on record. For anyone who hasn't seen it, find the latest Butter. Smooth. What's the search for it? I just see it on LinkedIn. I think smooth as butter is what I would search.
Man, we haven't even really cracked how to distribute it. I just posted on LinkedIn this morning, so connect with me on LinkedIn and look for the video. I also think we've got it on our YouTube channel. The Butter
it's
YouTube
around.
channel.
It's very good. Very, very addictive thing to watch.
Thanks, man.
And would you say that that kind of engagement in collaboration is that where the mission statement of the company came from? Because we basically last week we interviewed an expert in mission and brand, and kind of realized how important that is from for a startup from the word go. Really, is that kind of what you built everything around, or did you start from another place?
Yes and no. So again, we started Butter because we're all big, massive believers in remote work for a lot of reasons, right? I mean, personally, I value personal freedom a lot. I'm an adventurer at heart, right? So I love to travel. I love to see places, and remote work gives me that, right? But secondly, I've also lived in, I think, 5 or 6 different countries by now. And I think that interacting with people from different cultures, from different backgrounds, it just expands your horizon incredibly, right? And you can only do those things by building remote companies. So I really think that remote companies are the future. And one of the big blockers for building remote companies, that is this remote collaboration, like the ability to sit and collaborate in a way that is engaging and that kind of gets you to the same level of conclusions that you'd be able to get in the physical world. So yeah, we basically see this, we see synchronous collaboration as one of the final frontiers for remote work to truly work. And that's kind of what's driving the company's mission. Yeah.
Okay. And I guess that's for a company like Butter in the space that you are, having that powerful mission is really important, because there's so many reasons why someone can just be like, well, I'll just use Zoom or I'll just use Meet or whatever. But the thing is, because you've got that powerful mission statement and you know the direction you want to go in, that's super important for your company.
It really is. It creates a lot of, I think direction is even more important for remote companies. Because you don't sit together, you don't automatically get that underlying consensus going. You need to have it explicit. So that's why it has been incredibly important for Butter to kind of establish this vision of enabling complex collaboration for the world's enabling complex collaboration across time and space for the world's $1 billion workers. Sorry, I haven't said that for a while. It sounds so slogany, right? But it freaking it really gives that sense of direction for the entire team. Yeah.
I mean, honestly, when you find the correct mission statement and you find the correct why as to why you're doing something, it's always going to sound slogany, but that doesn't mean it doesn't take anything away from it, you know?
Exactly. I hear you, Dan.
Exactly. It's the same thing for Codesphere. This all-in-one, your entire development pipeline in one place. When I was first pitching that to people, it feels very salesy, but it is. There's no better way to say it, and that's it. It's what it is, you know. And defining that why is important to any startup team out there. Really understanding why you're doing what you're doing just makes everything else kind of gel together. So
it does. No, I agree.
And we can kind of dive back into this topic a little bit later. But does that make, because the mission of the company is so upfront, does that make your role as CEO slightly easier, or is that where a lot of direction of your staff comes from?
Both yes and no, because almost the more upfront a direction is, you still need to translate it, right? You need to translate because it's kind of big, and it's both concrete, but it's also vague at the same time, right? What does the enabling collaboration even mean? Like, how do you translate that into an actual product? Which challenges are people currently facing that makes collaboration across time and space hard, right? So that's the role of the CEO, is breaking that vision down into something that is more concrete that people can understand. In the early days, it also relates. So that also relates very much to the product roadmap. So which product we're going to build. It relates a lot to the target audience. I mean, the world's 1 billion knowledge workers. That's all nice, but you got to start somewhere, right? So it's so important to be aligned on which target audience we're addressing first, and then how we're moving across that. Right? So it's about breaking that down into something concrete.
What would you say the difference then is between a CEO and founder, or a co-founder like yourself? Because the line can be blurred.
It can. So I actually don't think the line can be blurred. I think a CEO is a role. A CEO is a role. A founder is what can I say? Title? I don't know. No, I don't even know what a founder is. That's something you did. You founded the company, but a CEO is a very clear role, just like a CPO is a role and a CTO is a role. Like we're 3 co-founders. I'm the CEO. We got Chris, who's the CPO leading up product, and we've got Adam, who's the CTO leading up tech. We've got very clearly delineated areas of responsibility. So just because I'm a founder doesn't mean that I'm a CEO.
Well said, actually, very well said.
And I guess that's the difference between. I remember someone saying to me that you should never be a CXO, which is just basically the chief of everything. Because then obviously it's it gets all blurry.
I hear you, Tim, and I think I've also heard of a lot of startups, especially startups with, I wouldn't say less experienced founders, but maybe people that haven't had as much work experience. They think, oh yeah, but we all need to make this a consensus-driven culture, and everyone needs to kind of be part of all decisions. Let's not give each other titles. And that's just the wrong way to approach things, because if you're not ready to delineate areas of responsibility, then you just work way less efficiently. And there's nothing glamorous in being the CEO, quite the opposite, I say. It's just a very specific area of responsibility that the CEO has.
And I think just to touch on what you just said there, like a kind of experienced CEO, can you give us a little bit of history into your previous company? Because that was kind of like a lot of the ideas of Butter came from, right? And I think it's important for the listeners to hear it, because I think a lot of people think, well, I'm just going to start a company and it's going to be successful. But obviously, maybe that's not how it works.
I thought that was exactly how it worked.
Wait a sec, hang on a sec.
Yeah, don't you just
boom?
You start a podcast and everyone wants to come on it.
it just works, doesn't it?
I wish. Oh man, so many battle scars there. So a bit more context. Again, I started my career in Bain & Company. I was there for close to 4 years. Then went to build a digital marketing agency in Indonesia, which I built up and sold. Was also there for close to 4 years in Asia. So again, had a little bit of experience before, and then went back to Denmark in 2018, where I founded a company called Streamcrux, which was a content discovery platform on top of the streaming services such as Twitch and Mixer. It was called back then YouTube. And that was a very interesting experience. The biggest thing there was, and that was where I met both of my co-founders. So Chris joined in, and Adam as also head of product, and Adam joined in as head of tech. And we built this platform up. But the thing was, we were just not at all solving for a real problem. Like, we had not spoken to enough users. We hadn't fully understand why we were building what we were building. So we were just building product, right? I mean, and fortunately, my 2 co-founders are excellent at building product. But if you build a wrong product, like, that just doesn't matter. So I think that was just the harshest learning there. I think the second harshest learning was, like, if you don't build good product, and if you have zero traction, or if you don't have any traction, even if you build good product, then you cannot raise money. And that was kind of what eventually made us fail with our previous startup, was we were simply not able to raise money, and then you die, right?
Yeah. there's definitely like a narrative that's kind of emerging for the first few episodes that we've recorded for this podcast, that this whole like the moment that you have to find your audience and like targeting that audience in the right way is like, I don't know, it seems like the gold dust a little bit. It's like the point where you kind of have an idea and you think, yeah, this is a goer, and then you kind of have to flip into that mode of research. Is that something that was there any kind of big learnings for you guys with Butter, where you like, we think this is the way we're going to do it, and then you showed people, or you found your target audience and they were like, actually we prefer you to do it this way? Was there any kind of big curveballs in that process?
I think there have been loads. I mean, it's all the time. I mean, Butter started out as a what we call a companion app, so like as an app that was running besides Zoom, and that just didn't work at all. And then Adam, our CTO, slapped together with video, and suddenly it kind of worked a little bit, right? And we started defining, interviewing loads and loads of people. I think I was interviewing 30 to 50 people on a weekly basis, so at the top. And with every interview, like we interviewed all the people in Butter, of course, because there was a video platform. So we invited people in there, and it was awesome, right?
Yeah, that's a good way to do it.
It was. But with every interview, I learned of something we were doing wrong. I learned of something that could be improved. But I also learned about the fact that they were facing very particular problems, and we needed to understand their problems. It wasn't like, oh, we need this feature. It was more like, hey, these people are facing big problems in pulling the planning phase of their workshops into their actual workshops. There's no connection between the planning tools and the actual in-session tools, such as Zoom. How can we build that, right? And then we had a hypothesis of how we built that, and we launched some of that, and that turned out to be only partially there. So then we got loads of curveballs in from that perspective.
And you personally were doing the interviews. You were handling that yourself.
Together with my co-founders, especially Chris, my CPO co-founder, and then the fourth person in our leadership team, Cheska, who heads up our growth team. She was also doing loads of these interviews personally. Yeah.
And this is a bit of a leading question, but obviously with being the CEO or the founding team, is that you've probably got a lot to do, but is it like? It's obviously that's an important role for you to carry out yourself.
Oh yeah, understanding the users and connecting with the users is everything. If you lose touch with who you're building something for and why you're building it, then you've already failed. And by the way, we're still early stages with Butter. We're just at the beginning of our journey. And I mean, if I was already I'm still doing user interviews. I'm still interfacing a lot with users. And if I was to kind of disconnect already now from this, then we would for sure fail. And I think that's not just me as the CEO, that's our entire founding team that should be ready to interface with users. Like we've got Adam, who's based in Indonesia, jumping on user debug calls for people in the Pacific time zone at like 1 a.m. his time, right? So, that's still happening, right? So it's tremendously important.
Can I just kind of segue a little bit here and ask about the name Butter? How did that come about?
Oh, Dan, I'm very happy you ask. No, so we were just. There's no big theory behind it. We were just saying that we were making meetings smooth as butter at one point, and then we became Meat Butter.
Meat Butter.
Meat Butter, and that was a very lovely name, except for when we entered the US, and they were like, meat and butter, this is really weird, and like what does this have to do, like, and I'm a vegan, and there was just very it was apparently a very inappropriate name, so we dropped the meat. And now we just butter.
It's a very inappropriate name.
Meat Butter doesn't sit right in my mind,
No, it's super weird. I don't know why we never call those.
It's like meat juice, you don't want to associate that with something.
Don't go there. Don't go there.
The yellow color that's like lended itself to all of your branding, though, it's so awesome. Like it's so visually grabbing. Was the branding been like a big part of your startup journey? Do you think it's important for a company your size to kind of focus so hard on that aspect as you have?
Well, you assume that we focused hard on it.
Just to jump in here, it's one of them brandings that's like seems effortless, but it's very memorable. You know, it's just that yellow potato looking, but it's butter, but it doesn't matter. It's very just crisp. You know?
I think our brand actually is very much the startup journey itself. It came about kind of randomly, but we saw that people responded very well to it, or not necessarily just well to it. They responded extreme to it, right? So we had some people that hated it and some people that loved it, right? The haters were like, hey, I cannot use this tool in this serious setting. Like, why are you yellow? Why do you have emojis?
Why are you yellow?
I wear a suit, right? and that was horrible, right? But then we got fortunately, even more people that really loved the brand and that responded a bit like you guys do. And then we just leaned in more and more into it, right? We built a product that was just more and more delightful, and we began making, videos like the one we sent out today because, hey, we're having fun here, right? And I think it connected very well with one of the problems that we were trying to solve, the whole thing about energy in collaborative sessions. Like an energetic brand like Butters, it just lends itself very well to an energetic product where you're kind of where you're trying to create energy and get people out of their chairs, right? So it kind of enabled us to do stuff that normal products wouldn't necessarily do and that wouldn't fit into normal products. Like, we have a soundboard that hosts in meetings can use for like buzzers, like or like canned laughter and stuff like that, you know?
That would be perfect. Wouldn't it be perfect for right now, Tim? We should switch over to Butter, get some laughter. All my jokes would seem much funnier.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's,
air horns throughout.
So yeah, that's
air horns. Yeah,
air horns. Yeah, we have air horns as well. So it's we have crickets. Like if you're sitting in a meeting, like you've all sat in that meeting, nobody's saying anything, right? Then this cricket soundboard goes on, right? So it's
that's great.
Nice.
Yeah.
We actually have at the creative studio where I work, we have a Monday morning meeting at 9 a.m. and it's kind of like an in-joke that it's just like everybody logs on and then it's just like a stare down for somebody to be like, morning. But it always warms up. But like, I was just thinking in my head how that meeting would feel different if it was the neon yellow and air horn / cricket sounds at the same time. I think
you should do the next one. You should do the next one in Butter.
Yeah.
Let's do the next episode in Butter, and let's get you back in a few weeks and do another one then, and do it in Butter. Do some video on it and put some air horns everywhere.
Yeah. There you
go. Okay, so just to pull it back to the startup matter at hand. As we were talking about doing the kind of user experience interviews and kind of getting the feedback yourself, I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about team building because I think that's obviously a very big topic for people who are putting together a startup and often extremely difficult. How fast did Butter grow as a team?
Yeah.
And where are you now, obviously?
So we're at the moment, I think, 19 people in 11 different countries. Again, our co-founders are based in respectively Denmark and Indonesia. We're actually meeting as co-founders for the first time next week, so it's really crazy. Chris and Adam have never met in person. Adam has met me. I have not met Adam, or cannot remember meeting Adam, and you can infer what that means.
Where are you going to meet? What's the event?
No, everyone's coming into Denmark, right? So we're a leadership team of 5 people now. So Cheska heading up growth, and then Annette, who's our chief of staff. So we're all flying into Denmark.
An expo or something. Okay.
No, it's not.
Because I have a little bone to pick with you. Actually, I was at where was I? Web Summit 2021 last year. I was in Portugal and I was walking along and I saw the Butter.io sign and I was hanging out for about an hour, walked back around maybe 2 hours later, and you were not there, sir. You were not there.
I am so sorry, Dan. I am so sorry, Dan. It was.
Did you just bail on the thing? What happened?
No, I got pulled into meetings. It was
okay. Well, I was there. I was thinking, I know this guy. He's going to be here. We'll have a great catch up. It's going to be
man. I apologize.
Next time we'll catch you.
You can come over to our stand next time when we have the Startup Architect stand at the Web Summit this year.
I would love to do that.
Codesphere was just recently at Start Summit in Switzerland, and they'll have some stands at some new ones. But maybe the Startup Architects could have one too, Tim. That'd be good.
Yeah, I think we deserve it. I think we deserve our own.
Oh yeah, 7 episodes in.
Exactly. That's what I mean. 7 good episodes. So yeah, tell us after your kind of like core team was put together, what happened next?
Again, I think question is where to begin. So we started building our team, I think, shortly after we raised up a small pre-seed round, and around when we launched Butter, to be perfectly honest. So we got a few engineers together there, and then we kept the team very lean until we raised our seed round in February of last year, where we then expanded the team rather rapidly to around our current size. So again, we've kind of grown in 2 big stages, I'd say. And it's been all right. So I think a number of learnings. One big thing is this whole, when you're remote, you can recruit ultra quickly. Like, you can get exceptional talent from around the world very fast. At the moment, we are recruiting for a mid to senior level front-end engineer position, and we've got 8 excellent candidates in the final stage, and it's hard to choose, right? This is amazing. Like, few startup founders that I speak with have this benefit, and it's purely because we're doing it remotely. We've got people from Nigeria, Pakistan, Indonesia, Portugal, all in the final stages. So from that perspective, like the whole growing and recruiting, it's been like we've been able to do it very quick in spurts. It, however, also meant that we needed a lot, because we are remote, we needed a lot of internal structure and documentation to be in place much earlier than you would if you were a co-located company. So we have very strict, like very clear Slack practices set in, like always do threads, like do a daily stand-up asynchronously in this channel, use that channel for that and this channel for this, right? So because Slack is where we communicate, so people need to adhere to these norms. We've got big documentation in Notion that everyone sticks to. We have a writing-first culture where people write up memos before decisions are made, so everyone can get an insight into, hey, why was this decision made? A lot of these things we've implemented, and we've only been able to scale reasonably fast remotely because of doing that.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's at least some of the things in terms of.
My next question was going to be, how do you balance 11 different countries and time zones? And I thought maybe at first maybe each team is at least similar in time zones, but obviously that's not possible. So
no, I mean it's a mix of. So we were initially mostly Europe and Asia time zones, and most of our dev team was in Asia at that time, and they were like up a bit late, and like then I'm a morning person, so then the overlap was fine. But once we started recruiting more people across, like now we have our head of content, he's our content DTs in Canada, in Vancouver, so it just becomes more difficult, and that's where having very strong asynchronous practices in Slack, so strong documentation practices and strong asynchronous communication rituals in Slack is incredibly important.
Is that does it ever become counterproductive? Because I know that's like always the reason not to write something down. It's just like, it takes so long. Like, but then I guess are you weighing that up the whole time, or what's the kind of, because obviously you're trying to move as fast as possible at the same time, and those kind of practices can be time consuming.
They can, but they are time consuming in the short run, but they save time in just the medium run, right? Because having clarity on why, like, we're pushing through some pricing changes that are going to happen on Monday, right? Having clear documentation on, hey, why were we making these changes and how are they exactly? That's just helped both our product team and our engineering team and our growth team go back to this core document several times. Hey, it's clear why these changes are being made. So we know how we're going to do this in product. We know which backend processes we need to set up, and we know how to communicate about it. So I actually think that it's just proven to be good practice, and it's been a big boon for us to have this culture.
Yeah. I totally agree with you. I think where I previously worked in London, we were like a rapid growth kind of startup, well, over the course of 6 years or so. And it was always just this thing of like, well, we haven't got time to do all this stuff. We haven't got time to do anything. But now it's the complete opposite. Where I work, we kind of like, it's kind of the process, and processes are like, is the gold. And I completely can subscribe to it now. I think it's a really awesome thing. In fact, I actually have integrated into my dev team your Slack idea generation process.
Nice.
As I saw on your blog.
Yep.
Which is awesome. I'll let you do the honors and explain it, because I'll butcher it, but it's a really cool process.
Yeah, it's that's awesome to hear, Tim. It's
it's really cool.
I'm totally out of the loop here, so pitch this to me.
No, we were like, the problem was a lot of people in the team had a lot of different ideas, like product ideas, growth ideas, whatever, but we didn't have anywhere to kind of put them or structure them. So what we did was create a Slack channel where everyone could write up an idea with the hashtag idea, and then we would push it through Zapier to a Notion database, essentially, where you could then like have an overview of the different ideas. You would always pop in there and put down a hypothesis, like some background on why you think this idea is a good idea. But you'd have a database of all the ideas, and then our product team would review the product ideas on a weekly basis. Our growth team would review the growth ideas on a weekly basis, etc. So that's kind of how we.
So it's a weekly basis feedback loop there. People are checking it. Okay.
Yep.
It's great.
Yeah.
I'm going to pin that too and try and implement it in my own practices. Yeah.
It's really, so we do it on our dev team with code sharing. So it's like a big, one of the big annoyances with Slack is it's really integrated with sharing code. Like you can share like snippets or like longer form pieces, but then it's like, okay, I'm sure that we fixed this a week ago, or I'm sure somebody posted how you do this.
Yeah.
And then you have to search for like the rough, it's usually like the maybe even the emoji that someone's posted with it. So now we have like this knowledge hub where you basically post the hashtag and it posts it into the thing. And then I just go through it and clean it up. So then the next person who starts will, yeah.
That's taking it to the next level, Tim. Like, it's awesome.
Yeah, that was good. I was very inspired by it. It's really cool.
Awesome, man.
So you mentioned there some of the processes you have in place that mean onboarding new people is much easier, and you can work over a vast distance, very international team, but you can make sure everyone's working in the same direction. Do you think that that's the only reason, or even the main reason, or better phrase, do you have any other piece of advice for startups to move and grow in such a rapid process, but stay on track, to stay on the rails? I know you guys got the MVP off the ground very quick, but some startups move so fast, and it's hard to keep the wheels on the cart, so to speak.
Yes, and sometimes moving fast should not be a goal of its own. I think the three main pieces to at least like directional success, if you can say that, right? So it's first thing is that you need to make sure that you're going in the right direction. So you need, and that goes back to the whole vision question that you also touched upon earlier, right? You need to make sure you have the right direction. Second thing is more about going in the same direction. So it's nice if you set the right direction, but if people, they don't necessarily know about this direction, or it isn't communicated clearly enough, then you'll have people moving different directions. Or if there simply aren't the processes in to keep people in the right direction. So the second thing is just getting people to move in the same direction. That's hard. And that becomes harder the larger you are. Even with 20 people, it's difficult. And then there's the whole velocity thing, right? So that's moving fast, right? So once you got people to understand the direction, everyone moving in the direction. No, actually, that's wrong. Once you make sure that you've set the right direction, you make sure that everyone moves in that direction, then you need to kind of light a fire up behind. So that's when you make sure that you move rapidly, right? But you need to get the first two things right first, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And is that something like, is that balance coming from your core team? Is it like the checks and balances of you as a sort of like C levels, or is that coming from within the wider team as well?
It's being driven by the C levels, and I would say that especially in early startups, and I don't know about later stage, but at very much the stage we're at, like C levels should have a very high level of, I wouldn't say authority, but they should have a very high level of touch to most things that are happening. They should not delegate too much. They should be setting the direction even on smaller things. To be honest, that doesn't mean that other people cannot have inputs or cannot take strong chunks of ownership about various areas, but the C levels should for sure be involved to a reasonably low level for a rather long period of time. Because if you let go too early before you're like solidly at product market fit and solidly growing, right, then you lose a lot of the founder drive. You lose a lot of the founder intuition even. So yeah, just kind of going back to this founder intuition thing, which I think is a very powerful thing. I did so many interviews. I have so much logged into my mind about the problem that we're solving and who we are, that just putting that down, documenting all of that, and explaining that to everyone is difficult, very impossible. So I need to just trust my gut and kind of get it out there in terms of product decisions, for instance. Yeah.
I think we kind of already touched on this, but like I think something that I'm really interested in is that like split between that founder intuition and then like how you get the team to move whilst not asking for blind support. And I think it sounds like you guys have got like a really nice balance where you've done so much user research, but then you've got this like dedicated core team as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult, right? Because I think at any given, especially in the early stages of a startup, like 50%, maybe even more of the product decisions, growth decisions, whatever that you make, they will be very hypothesis or intuition driven. They'll be like, hey, I think this because of that, right? Sometimes you're able to fully formulate the background for it, but very often you're not really. And formulating the full background for that would be too slow. And there I agree that there's a big trade-off between the documenting and explaining. And the other 50% needs to be data-driven based on user feedback, etc.
Okay.
So I guess that's kind of down to that, and that there needs to be a certain faith or acceptance in the team that there's some decisions are just founder intuition, and we joined this team because we believe in the founders and their intuition, and a certain amount is going to be very data-driven decisions.
Yeah, it's definitely like becoming more and more apparent as we talk to people like you that this kind of like lead role is such a role of many hats. Like there's like so many kind of facets of the business that you have to have like an eye on. I remember reading a few months ago about how founders who are on their own, like they don't have a co-founder, don't get any. It's very hard for them to get funding, and now it's starting to seem it's kind of like painfully obvious because you're just going to need somebody who's going to like bounce your ideas off you, who's going to be at that same level of drive with that same level of intuition. But
they say that your co-founder could be the most important decision you make.
Yep.
I think it's an arguable fact, but I think it could be.
Yeah. No. It is to a very large extent. I mean, we're spending such a large chunk of our lives together, right, on building something that, of course, it's a very important decision.
Very cool.
I do think, like, one last comment on this whole like blind faith and founder intuition. I think it is like where founder intuition kind of really comes down is in this condensation into the vision and how that vision translates down into what we're building in terms of product and how we're growing and stuff like that, right? So it does translate into strategy. You don't necessarily need to explain all the whys, but you need to explain the whats, hey, what are we doing, right? You need to explain the direction.
Yeah, okay. So there's that sort of like that second layer that's also like maybe there's like a core long-term goal of the why, but then that's that what that sort of like wraps that's important to pass down to all the team members.
Exactly, and that needs to be more concrete. Yeah.
So the last question I have then, the last question I have before we finish is community building. So obviously building community, you spoke a lot about how important product research is, and that's I 100% and on that train with you. Becoming a learning company is, the difference between life and death. But in terms of growing your community, how's that been going for Butter?
It's been going amazing. I mean, I would give a big shout out to our head of community, Anne Maria, who's simply extraordinary. And she's managed to kind of pull this community of, I think, 1,000 different facilitators, workshop facilitators, trainers together over the past half year that are very engaged. And again, these are people that understand the use case, understand what we're building for, and have felt those problems very much themselves so much that they're an incredible wealth of knowledge for what we need to build, together with an amazing ambassadorship for the product. So that's the two big.
I think
doing that.
You guys are in a very lucky position that everyone on Earth has felt that pain post-pandemic. Then I wish I could do this in Zoom, or I wish I could do that in Google Meets, but I can't. So yeah, I think that's a very nice spot to be in.
And what does community building look like for you guys? Is it just basically you work with the people that use your product, or are you also kind of like active in other forums or websites where you can kind of take learnings?
I think it's. So again, there are different types of communities. We have chosen to build a community that is more around the practice, which is facilitation, than it's about the product directly. Of course, it's about Butter, right? It's the Butter community, so it's not like we're dressing it up as something else. But we have a lot of facilitators in there that have not yet been converted to Butteriers. Or whatever.
Butteriers.
I don't know, like, just pick that up.
Butteriers.
That's going to be the next video.
Butteriers.
But that's really interesting, because we get knowledge on why they're not fully converting and why they're not convinced to use Butter yet. That's amazing, right? I mean, and we also then make a lot of best practices for facilitation, best practices for hosting workshops and that kind of stuff in that community. We've also been very particular about the fact that we are building this community, and we want to not own it, but we don't want it to be spread across the internet. We have created a community site where people share things, etc. And of course, we interact with other communities, but this is the pure Butter community, and that is the core of the community building, is kind of having that within our span.
Basically, taking this like product adjacent community, as opposed to just being like, these are the people that use our app. It's like, okay, these are the people that are actually kind of running these workshops, and that's your kind of community. That's cool.
Exactly.
Nice. You got like the inside track before you even start.
I think building community can be incredibly powerful for giving you those insights about what you need to build in the product, and that's probably the most valuable part of our community, is that constant feedback.